Today, we will be talking about burnout. And burnout means you're no longer enjoying work, right? Well, it does mean that, and that can be a symptom and a part of it, but there are so many more signs and just parts of it that I didn't even realize. I'm currently recovering from burnout. Before I realized I was burnt out, I spent a year and a half not feeling well. And I really just didn't realize that I was working so much. And that's why burnout wasn't on my mind, which is like a classic workaholic situation, right? Like I didn't feel good, but of course it couldn't be because of work. So I thought it would be helpful to share some of the symptoms and signs of burnout that I experienced that I didn't know were signs of burnout. And I'll share 4 of them. I'll go in the order of severity just because that's kind of how it flowed for me and my experience. The first sign that I experienced that I didn't know was a sign was neglecting my needs. So I began to neglect my basic needs to prioritize work. And I didn't realize that I was neglecting my needs because everything I did was so focused on work because I do love working. So, for example, I would regularly get 5 hours of sleep a night, but I wouldn't think anything of it because I was killing it during the day, right? I was getting so much done for my business. The business was growing, but it wasn't even in my mind that this is really bad for you that you're getting 5 hours of sleep each night. I also started to kind of mix up or neglect my showering schedule to make sure I had more time to get to work in the mornings. I would be responding to emails and messages while I was eating dinner, really didn't have any breaks. I really didn't have personal time outside of work. When you're in a field, and for me, it was being an entrepreneur where the work is never really done, it can be really easy to neglect your basic personal needs as a human. Work was the most important thing for me over personal needs, and that's really where it all started to go wrong. Then came symptom number 2. Revising my values. Now, here's what I mean by that. I basically started to shift, not even voluntarily, but shift what I cared about most. So the biggest and most heartbreaking example of this was being too stressed or focused on work that when I would be having conversations or like break conversations about life, just chats with the people that I care about, I would internally really not feel good because I knew this was time that I wasn't working and I would feel stressed that I wasn't working. So that includes no longer enjoying chats with Jeremy, my boyfriend who also works in this space, chats with visitors or employees that were outside of work-related things because I was so hyper-focused on work. I was always listening and I was never mean, but sometimes I would cut a conversation short or just internally I would be stressed and not feel good that I wasn't working on something during this time, even if it was just like a short 10-minute conversation about something fun. And of course, I internally knew I didn't want to feel this way while having conversations or connections with people because I love connecting with people. It's the richness of life. And I used to enjoy those moments. I didn't know why it was happening. I was really confused. And basically my thought process, because of where I was in burnout, was I am so focused on work right now. I'm doing a great job with work. I'm supposed to be focused on work, right? Like, why do I feel so bad for having these feelings during connections and conversations that I should get back to work? Because work is most important, right? Well, then I started to feel bad for having those feelings because I knew I didn't want to feel that way during connections and just how my feelings had shifted. So I started to make myself feel even worse for feeling uncomfortable when taking a break. And that just escalated things even more. Shame adds so much more pressure and heaviness to problems. And that definitely happened to me. And my burnout continued to escalate from there. Now, the next symptom is when it really started to get serious, and that symptom was depersonalization. I stopped enjoying the things that I used to enjoy, And I stopped feeling connected with myself because life became mechanical for me. I was just going through the motions of work. Life was no longer feeling fun because I put all of my eggs into one basket. It was a business that I loved and cared so much about, but putting so much focus on the business exclusively stripped all of the other personal favorite things, that I have in life that I care about that really make life dynamic. I do not wish the feeling of depersonalization upon anyone. We are all so unique and have our own skills, but our own interests, things that we love about life, things that make life special to us. And by getting depersonalized, by being burnt out and so focused on work, all of that was stripped away from me. So everything in my life was just very mechanical and I didn't feel like myself. And that really led to the final symptom of burnout that I'll share today. So the depersonalization led to depression, and depression is the final stage before collapse. Luckily, I did not have a collapse from burnout because those can be really, really serious from a health standpoint, but I was close. For me, depersonalization and depression go hand in hand because I'm someone who knows myself and I really value my sense of self. So when I am not feeling like myself, that definitely tends to depressive episodes for me. Basically, by the time I was depersonalized, I was depressed. I didn't really show it because I'm high functioning from just other traumas I've had in my life, as many of us are. And for lack of a better word, we're just trained to keep going through the situation. So I was still showing up for work and I was still moving forward, but internally I really didn't feel well. And I knew that I was only operating at a certain percentage of my potential because I really wasn't feeling good. I was feeling depressed. And these depressing moments quickly turned into high functioning depression. It started to become much harder for me to get things done for work and to get things done for life in general. And really at this point, probably at the depersonalization that then led to depression, but I mean, there was a long stretch of months where I knew something needed to change. I knew something was severely wrong. And you might be like, how did you not know that something was wrong? Well, I did know something was wrong. I just thought it was a me issue. I did not think that it had to do with work. I really didn't, which is, like I said earlier, the classic mind of a workaholic. Like, oh, all of these issues in my life are going on, but it's not because I'm working like 80 to 100 hours a week, right? I had been feeling variations of these feelings for a while, but it wasn't until May when I got served a graphic on Instagram that explained the 12 stages of burnout, and I saw some of the symptoms that I shared with you today, and I finally realized what had been going on with me. I think I got burnout not only from working so much, but from also being on a path that wasn't fulfilling to me as much as another path that I knew that I should be on would be. I also knew I didn't want a life where I was working 80-ish hours a week, which had been my reality for a long time. So I hope this video is helpful, and I wanted to share it because I spent a year and a half experiencing these different symptoms and signs of burnout, obviously getting more severe towards the end. And I didn't know what was going on. But when I found out, oh, I'm burnt out, I was then able to take the necessary steps needed to get myself on a recovery track. So with that, I hope that this video can bring some awareness to signs and symptoms of burnout that we don't necessarily talk about as much. I am very thankful that before I experienced burnout, 2 years ago, I started getting healthier. So I'm thankful that I had a base of health to at least carry me through a little bit when I was going through these really dark moments, like healthy eating, working out, some mindfulness. I think things would have been a lot worse if I didn't have that base. And also that shift in health helped me realize that I didn't want to be working 80 hours a week that I did want to be focusing on my well-being, my connections with people over work, because being super focused on work, I love it, but it was also something that I just naturally gravitated to starting in high school for some very specific reasons that maybe we will talk about in another video. As someone who is currently recovering from burnout and recently realized that they may be a workaholic, I am continuing to really, really focus on wellness, and I hope to share tips, things I'm experiencing, and just helpful stories on my channels in the future if you're someone who is also taking time for yourself and taking a look at wellness. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching this video, listening to my story, and I hope this video is helpful to at least one person.